Whether you're a parent navigating myofunctional disorders or simply curious about optimizing your family's overall health, the Myohacker podcast is your guide. Hi, I'm Karindy, a speech-language pathologist, myofunctional therapist, and a mom on a mission to bring holistic health to you and your family. Together, we'll explore whole-body connections and integrative solutions. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review to help other families discover this important information. Visit myohackerslp.com for free resources and guides. Quick disclaimer. The content shared in this podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast or its affiliates. This podcast does not provide medical, legal, or professional advice. Always consult a professional regarding your circumstances. By listening, you agree that the host and podcast are not responsible for any actions you may take based on the information provided. Now, let's dive into today's episode. With me today is Nicole Archambault. I had the most lovely interview with her. She's not flashy about her amazing certifications, but I want you to be impressed. This woman knows her stuff and has really gone above and beyond to be able to help patients in meaningful ways with fantastic scientific backing. So Nicole Archambault is an ASHA board certified speech language pathologist with a unique blend of subspecialties. She's the founder of Allspace Therapy in Los Angeles, California, and is the myofunctional therapy section leader for the American Academy of Physiological Medicine and Dentistry. She is a graduate of the Mind-Brain Teaching Certificate program at Johns Hopkins University. Nicole is a national and international speaker, as well as a published author. Now, join with me today as we listen to this heartwarming and enlightening conversation. All right. Welcome to the Myohacker podcast. With us today is the incredible Nicole Archambault. As you heard in her bio, she has such a profound background in regards to clinical treatment, research, and just really paving the way for others to learn from amazing just protocols that she has helped put in place and practice. But we are actually going to talk not just about airway specific things, but about connection and really what is happening in regards to families and children where there can be a disconnect. So Nicole, I literally was like, as we were talking, I was like, I have to stop you. Everything you're sharing, I want people to hear. So we're going to back up just a second to what we were talking about before I turned on the record button and talk about the disconnection that you are seeing, that if you're a clinician listening to this, you are seeing this. You're seeing children that are disconnected, and we can work on the tongue, on nasal breathing, on all of these things. But if someone is not inhabiting their body in a very present way, how do we maintain changes? What are we working with? So Nicole, go.
Okay. Well, Karindy, I first want to say thank you so much for having me here. I feel like this is the best play date ever.
Yes.
I love your energy and I love everything you're doing. And I appreciate the people that are going to be listening to this as well, because I know they think so highly of you just as I do and what you're putting into the world. So thank you. Okay. Disconnection. I mean, gosh, anybody living in today's age knows how fast the world is moving, and that hits a lot of the kids. It's hitting all the kids we work with, and it's certainly hitting their families. And I think that when we look to retrain nasal breathing patterns and when we're working on oral functions, these things are really nuanced. They're very fine motor. They take a certain level of focus. And when we are, as humans, are not present, it gets really hard to find that connection to our bodies. And I think kids come to us for a lot of reasons, whether it's a lot of time commuting in cars, a lot of time in extracurriculars, a lot of time on tech that has its own implications. And then, just not even getting outdoors. Getting outdoors, as you know, of all people, is really, I think, one of the ways that we can connect to our bodies. So I think anything we're looking to do to get these kids connected to some of the goals we have for them in therapy, which are really just meant to be life goals. These are things that are foundational to take them through the years to come, has kind of got to come back to getting them connected in the body. And as clinicians, if we can look more outside the mouth at the bigger picture, I think we're going to help set them up for success.
I just want to take a moment with that, because sometimes, I think we are just, and I say we, this means like people that are alive today that are managing as best as we can.
Yeah.
And like yesterday, I was working with a patient, and I won't go into the specifics, but what she had going on, I was like, I was asking her, like, are you in pain? And she kept saying, no, I'm great. I'm fine. I'm great. And finally, I was like, I don't feel comfortable with that, because given your symptoms, given what you have going on, I actually think it would be very healthy for you to be in pain and you to recognize those signals. So I had us just stop with the session with the therapy that we were doing, because I was like, I just because of what that disconnect that I was sensing was going on, I was afraid she was going to actually incur some trauma that would just add on to another layer of why she might be disconnected in this moment from what I believe should be like she should be feeling pain due to some of these things. Do you see that in children as well?
Yeah, I do. But to speak to what you just said, I love that you stopped to give her an opportunity to check in with her body, but also asking her to really maybe sit and reflect in the signals, right? And I see it a lot in children. I think like interoception and all of our senses, our proprioception plays such a critical role. And one of the things I find helpful is getting kids sometimes to just do body scans, right? And giving them the vocabulary ahead of that for some of the feelings that can come up in our body. Because what I do find is a lot of the kids that are disconnected are also the kids who can't tell you how they're feeling.
Exactly.
And that's a huge red flag. It's a huge red flag for like what you're going to be presented with in terms of their sensory system in your therapy. And if people were to say, Nicole, does the sensory system really matter for what you do? It absolutely does. You do not have to just be an OT. We're all dealing with a human body, regardless of what profession you're in.
Absolutely.
I think that there's not enough that can be, it can't be emphasized enough how important it is. And this is why I really believe in like the slow down mindset. That's what I like to call it, where we slow down and we help people. It doesn't need to be like this huge number of exercises, as you know. Sometimes it's just a few like golden nuggets or pearls that we give in a session, and in helping them to connect. I mean, we have to slow down. We can't throw everything in the kitchen sink at these people. Even if we can say, gosh, I noticed this and I noticed that. What can their nervous system actually handle in terms of our touch, our words, the things we're asking them to do, the tone that we use, the pace of our words? I mean, it's a whole thing in terms of helping facilitate that connection. And I think then when we do, this too, because people come back from your sessions and they're like, this is what happened this week, or this is how I took what you said. And I did this when I went to the dentist's office, or I did this at school. And now all of a sudden they're becoming more empowered with the things we give them because they're starting from this foundation of being connected.
So what does that look like? Let's walk us through. And I know my sessions, like they never look the same, but in general, what are some of those foundational connection moments that you are establishing with patients and with the family?
Well, I start after the first evaluation, my first treatment, we start with our I ams. So even when you have 4 and 5-year-olds, they can tell you what their I ams are. A younger child may get real concrete with you and say, I'm a boy, or I'm funny, I'm a brother, I'm a student. But the lovely thing, I really believe in a strengths-based approach to practice. And if children are offered this opportunity to share their I ams, it is this window into the things they really believe that they're good at. And sometimes I had one little girl say one time, she had the best sense of humor, I'm a banana hater. And I just thought that was hysterical.
Own it.
I love it because I want to know also what children believe about themselves, because when they come to therapy, we're going to be asking them to do different things. We're going to be asking them to stretch into they're already in the space of dis-ease, right? But that's where we have a space to learn and grow, where we can make the most gains. But we also want to know, are children willing to change the beliefs they hold about themselves? So that's a dialogue I like to have. And then I like to get them, I like to have a buy-in. So we go over areas and they get to scale it for me. Like, where do you see yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? And then we set their goal. What's your goal? And then what I try to do is tie into how there's things we're going to do that can help with this, right? So they know why they're coming. But aside from all the talking and all the connecting, I like to get their bodies moving. And that depends on what's intriguing to a child. Are we going to take out the stepping stones that are at different levels? Are they going to move around? Are we crawling through a tunnel? I mean, Karindy, just like you, I'm pulling stuff out of my hat, taking the lead of a child. And, you know, I do love using humor with kids, but I'm also very mindful because some kids get dysregulated with it. So, you know, you have to be careful. But ultimately, I think just going in and meeting each child where they're at. And I just feel the energy, and the biggest thing for me is connecting with them, right? Because a kid is not their intake that's coming in. They're not all their diagnoses. They're literally the person that is meeting you in that moment. And that's that's just how I look at it and go from there.
So, you know, we were talking at the beginning, like before we started recording, about how we, you know, everyone in this kind of airway space, it's, you know, initially is like tongue ties and airway and nasal breathing and sleep and all those things. We're kind of trumpeting that. When did you start making that transition, though, that it really is about connection?
Probably, if I'm being honest, when I really started connecting deeply with myself, which was in the pandemic, because I remember being on online conferences and things. And this isn't to minimize or diminish anything anyone was doing in terms of education, and because it's all important and we know that.
Yeah.
But and I know I'd already been feeling it, but it just became very apparent to me that this is something. This is like a foundation, but it's just not everything. And I think is wanting to move the quality of people's lives forward and to enhance their lives. We all get excited to learn, and that's such a great quality. I admire lifelong learning. I'm a lifelong learner. But if we don't start in connection, then everything else we're doing is just, it's not going to land as well. And if we really look at life and what makes this so juicy and glorious, it's the connection. Like, it's the connection I've had with you, Karindy. It's the connection I have with, you know, other people in my life and these little patients I see and their parents. I mean, that's what makes this all worth it. So we could talk about protocols all day long and all of these other things, but I'm more interested in talking, you know, about people. And you're right. How do we connect, and how do we most importantly help them connect to themselves? The way I see it is, especially with kids, we help them connect to themselves and they're connected to self. Now they're asking us questions. We are helping them establish the type of relationships they can have with future healthcare providers, because they're going to grow up to be those humans who are connected, who know how to advocate for themselves, who know how to let a provider know what's going on in their body because they're aware of it. And it could be the physical part of it. It could be the emotional part of it, or the mental part of it, because all those things matter.
So is that when you went through, because you have amazing certifications. Like, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I would love to talk about the program you went through with Johns Hopkins, and because that's very special. Can you share a little bit about that? And was that during that time or before it? Like, where did that come in?
So the Johns Hopkins thing, I did that in, I guess, 2015, but actually it was back in 2007. I did an educational specialist degree, which is another graduate degree in brain research, and which is essentially educational neuroscience.
How
because
cool.
I've always loved the brain. I love the way the whole system works. And I was kind of frustrated with our profession. I'm like, I don't want to sit at a table. I'm not going to drill and kill these kids. Like, I just, and I'm not saying there's not a place for all types of practices.
Right.
But I just knew that that wasn't going to be the main thrust of what I did. And so I started really with that other degree. And then I've just always been interested in different courses. You know, I've taken a lot of stuff in sensory integration. I love somatics. I love the mental health piece. I love autonomic nervous system. But then, I don't know, the Johns Hopkins thing just kind of was like, oh my gosh, here it is. And why don't you just apply? And so I did. You know, it was a year. It was probably, I actually, to this day, I would say that was the toughest coursework I've ever taken.
Wow.
But it was also incredibly rewarding. And I met great people. I mean, these people came from all over the country. Some people came from other parts of the world. I ended up TAing for a semester afterwards for one of my professors in a class that when I took it, I thought was going to break me, which was, it was kind of funny. But yeah, it just kind of, you know, when you land in things that just feel right and they resonate very deeply with you, and you know that's your path, that's just kind of how I felt. And so, you know, I did that for a year and just with the intention I would go and eventually do a clinical doctorate. But, you know, I don't know, because I think right now I just want to kind of live life and see my patients and educate and raise awareness. And I might get a degree someday in something totally different. Just keeping my mind open. But it's one of those things I'm really happy that I did. I think it served like my profession and what I can offer people. And yeah, I think if anyone's wanting to learn more, just go for it.
So as a part of your practice, like you're very integrative with not only the children and meeting them where they're at, but also the families and helping them connect. I want to know how you have used all of these tools. And you can just say, sometimes it's not tools, sometimes it's my gut. I'm a fan of that. But I want to know, like, how do you braid this all together? And when do you know, okay, this is time to shift my focus from the child to the dynamic between the parents and the child and the dynamic between myself and the child, if that's ever needed?
Right. Okay. This is a good question. It's very layered.
Sorry. Well, it's probably like 10 questions in one.
No, I love it. I'll see if I can remember all of them. So my gut is always on board and I'm cool with that. Right. Because I find if I don't follow my gut, then I'm literally not living. I'm not really leaning into that intuitive guidance that's there for a reason. So I don't ignore it. It's there on board. I am really a firm believer in the family nervous system. I think that as a practice, and I'm going to talk next weekend in my course about the triad approach to care, but we know that children regulate off of adults. And we know that when a child comes into our practice, they're going to regulate off of us, as are their parents. Right. And sometimes, not sometimes, really all the time, we've got to be checked in on whatever level that is to the parent that's there. Because to really make the gains and to connect with the child, you've got to connect with the parent because that's who they're going home with. That's the, you know, like, haven't you ever had those, like, probably those experiences where a parent comes in, a child has a tongue tie, and one parent's on board with doing something and the other's not?
Yes.
I mean, the last thing I want to do as a provider is have parents going and doing things that they're not comfortable doing. And so I think I say this to people all the time, but it's really like tuning in and holding a space. And again, we meet children where they're at. We have to meet their parents where they're at too. And sometimes, you know, we're just planting seeds. I'm not there to give everyone all their answers because I think that they need to come to the answers at the time that's right for them. And that's going to just look different for everybody.
What about shame? I feel like you are so, like you address this so beautifully. Can you talk about that, about the family coming in and just talk about it? I know
I think they're amazing when they come in. I know a question you want to ask me. They're amazing when they come in, regardless of when it is, right? It's all happening when it's supposed to. And thank God they're doing what they're doing in the now, because that's what we have is the present. We don't have what happened 2 years ago. We're not going to have, we can't live in 2 years ahead. So I always encourage and reinforce how wonderful it is that this parent, whoever is in front of me, knows their child, that they've been doing all these amazing things to help them along the way. Right. When I was at Hopkins, one of Dr. Sarah Johnson spoke in my first semester, and she does lots of research on the fetal environment. And one of the things she said, and this is one of my really big whys when I look at why am I doing all of this, what compelled me, she said, we must protect people's potential. And that really resonated with me in an airway space, especially, right? Because it's foundational to like everything. And airway and sleep issues affect every function a human has. But I kind of also took it one step further, and that we have to protect parents' potential. because so many of the parents I see come in and they're beating their heads against a wall on a regular basis, or they're shaming themselves. You know, their self-talk is just, it's sad. And you've probably heard parents that are shooting on themselves. And
I've been that parent. I won't just say I've heard it. I have been that. It is a daily thing to work through as a living, breathing parent.
Yes, we all have. And we're all imperfectly perfect. You know, it's part of the process of being a parent and learning. And so it's really, how do we support parents? Because this is messy. Yeah. You know, we get into the messiness of parenting. A lot of people have more than, you know, if they have more than one kid or more than one diagnosis in a household. And it's just letting them know that it's okay. We can all do the best we can with the tools we have at the time, with the information we have. And I think it's really just slowing ourselves down so that we can read a parent, you know, when their eyes are getting glossy, or when the parent that comes in, I call these my tornado parents, and I usually can pick them up on a phone call, or, you know, because they're very energetic and they want everything yesterday, right? And that's the kind of parent we need to, you know, just invite, if we can, into that slower space so they can start maybe seeing their children for who they are and giving them some of that time and giving them time, because I think their nervous systems are just totally amped up.
In that moment, how are they seeing their children?
You want my honest opinion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. That's why we're here.
I think they see them, but I don't think they see them to the depth that they could.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a very surface level. Look, it's like if you're speeding down the Autobahn, right? And you're looking out a window and you try to do, because I've tried to do this, you know, you take pictures of the scenery and you look at the picture afterwards and it's all a blur. And I think that's what happens when we run at such fast paces in life, especially today, because the average parent is just getting from one thing to the next. And most people are in survival mode.
And I know I have had that. I definitely resonate with tornado parent. And that has been me in the past where I'm like, oh, I'm learning this. Oh, let's apply this. Oh, let's do this and this and this. And it's exactly that. Like it's this churning, spinning. We're going. We're in the car and we're hopping from this therapy and we're going to that thing. Did you take your supplement? You know, and then realizing, no, he just wants to play with sticks. He just wants to be in the dirt and literally do this boring thing. He wants me with him. Yeah. And it's very dull. And it's not exciting. We're not moving through these milestones or whatever. But that's where they are.
You know this. And he is. I love that when you posted that, because that's neuroplasticity. And when we're willing to just slow down, that's when kids get to make their own mistakes, right? The brain has to like go through its rough drafts. And learning and putting things into long-term memory take time. You know, I'm sometimes at this point in life really thinking, gosh, there's too much coming into my brain. And I can tell because there's like times I'm not like my words. I'm like, where did that word go?
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, Nicole, it's too much. Your gatekeeper in here is not working as well. You're asking it to be bombarded constantly. And you have to like put up that enough is enough. And so I think, you know, I almost was to the point of putting speed limit signs in my office.
Oh, I love that. I am going to. I love this. What would you put on them? Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to think. I mean, I was literally going to put speed limits. I'm sure if I was given more thought, I would have a lot of things I would probably.
I think you have an Etsy shop in the making right here.
Yeah.
Yes, just saying.
Yeah, because I remember this one dad who came in and, you know, he was so consumed with his tongue tie, and yet his child was literally, you know, gagging with anyone touching around his mouth. And yet I was just doing something with him on the floor with the toy he was interested in and building trust and building a rapport and making like, it was a huge gain for him, but probably for his dad looked really tiny. Yeah. And he just kind of wanted to put everything away and like move along. But it's like, oh my goodness, this kid needs to be able to integrate. He needs to be able to integrate his sensory system. And as much as we all wish we could do things yesterday, that's not reality.
It's so true. So What about the parents, myself included, who I'm like, man, I'm just going to shut everything down. I wish I could go homeschool right now and do this so I could just be slow. I'll just say there are a number of factors in my life that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we might, sometimes this knowledge we have of optimal and ideal connection just might not be something we can incorporate ideally at this time. This is literally me asking, what is your advice for us as parents who really want to connect and maybe feel like we're juggling all these balls? What do you say?
I would say to you, Karindy, how do you eat an elephant?
Oh gosh, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would say we don't have to go from one extreme to another, right? And I would say break it down. And what's the next thing you can do? You know, I think there's actually like an Abraham Hicks quote. It's like, can you find the next best feeling? So if you could translate that into what's the next action you can take? And if that action is just moving you towards the end goal, then that's all you need to do in the moment, right? It's just like our patients. If we give them so much to do, the likelihood that they're going to go home and integrate that is about like this.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we make it doable, and I think if we can do this with our patients, we can do this with ourselves. Right. Then making some of these shifts, it becomes more doable. And we might find that we don't have to completely give everything up. We don't have to totally homeschool, or we don't have to totally take away technology. In the process of just taking these small steps, we can, I think, find where we resonate and what's actually doable for us and our kids. That's what I think.
I literally feel like warmth in my chest right now because that resonated so much. I'm like, wow, I feel it. So if you're listening, I want you to take a breath because that should settle. We should let that integrate, that thought. And it literally, like, I feel my nervous system slowing down. And this is where that magic happens with mirror neurons. And like you said, that it really is, how do kids regulate? It's with us as parents. Let's take a moment to talk about one of my absolute favorite tools for supporting health and wellness at home, ozone therapy. You know I'm a huge fan of finding effective, science-backed ways to support our body's natural immune defense system. That's why I've been using the Stratus 3.0 ozone generator from Simply O3 for years. Whether it's tackling ear and sinus issues or boosting overall health, incorporating ozone therapy at home has made it so much easier for my family to overcome illnesses and proactively defend against sickness at school. As a busy mom and business owner, I love that I can support my immune health without needing to run to a clinic. And let's be honest, most of the time, when my kids get sick, it tends to be at night when clinics are closed anyways. Simply O3 makes it incredibly accessible to bring the power of ozone therapy into your home. Their equipment is easy to use and designed with safety in mind. And because you're part of the Myohacker community, Simply O3 is offering 10% off your purchase when you use the code Myohacker. Just head on over to simplyo3.com to check out their ozone generators and supplies and use the code Myohacker at checkout. So for parents who are like, okay, why does it matter that I regulate my nervous system? And really, okay, my little guy, let's say his nervous system is dysregulated and I am in sort of this flux of like, oh my gosh, everyone sees this. This is my kid. I should be able to handle this. And I'm now feeling dysregulated. Why does this matter? Why do I need to slow myself down, get myself in balance, and then help him?
Such a good question. When we talk about self-regulation, it can easily get confused with parents feeling that they need to be calm. Being calm is actually different than being self-regulated.
Thank goodness.
Right?
Because I'm very rarely calm.
Right. Nobody, but how many of us, me included, your kid is like going to have a meltdown in the store with all these people or on an airplane, and you're trying to like stay calm here, and you're like not calm on the inside at all. Yeah. You're like a hot mess, right? And that's like what it is. And that happens to all of us. Yeah. But self-regulation is the ability to still stay connected within the chaos that's going around. Because the fact is, if we show up disingenuous with kids, they can feel it.
Oh yeah, they're such
They
little sleuths.
They totally know it. They feed off of our energy. They are wired up in terms of interoception and all these other things, the attachments that they have that they know. Mm-hmm. And so it's really just maintaining your own self-connection in those moments of chaos. And everyone's got different tools. Maybe it's doing a reframe in their mind, that they tell themselves, they look at it in a different perspective, or they give themselves a few seconds to just drop into their breath, or maybe to just bounce on their toes and just feel, hey, I'm supported here. The ground is here. It's really okay. I think one of the things I saw once that a parent did in a therapy session with a child who was a little too savvy for her parents and where they were with what they were trying to communicate. And the parent was just lying to her. And the sad thing was it's kind of stealing an opportunity. If you're a parent and you're not able to tell someone, whether it's your child or someone else, that you just feel frustrated, right? Or maybe something hurts your feelings, or maybe it just really surprised you. You're really not showing up authentically, but you're also stealing, so to speak, the opportunity for someone else to maybe also know that there's kind of a consequence, that we're doing all these things and it's bi-directional. And when we make everything look pretty and we try to cover it up and package it like it's a-okay, sometimes things just aren't okay. And sometimes it's just okay for people to sit in the discomfort. And we don't have to get super wordy. Like, this is why, 2-year-olds don't have their prefrontal cortex all up and running and developed. We don't give them a dissertation on their behavior. Yeah. We're better off maybe touching them on the back and just saying, hey, I love you, I'm here, and waiting until there's a calm moment, helping them maybe they just need a heavyweight blanket over them, and then when they can hear it, then we can go in with, a few more words.
All right. So everyone that's been listening, you've heard us talk about regulation and connection. We've been talking about, airway versus these kind of bigger picture issues, which is why I'm so excited that Nicole has her course coming out for providers. And it's actually going to be next weekend by the time you guys hear this. So hopefully you're hearing this when it airs, because I want you to join me as I'm going to be there learning with Nicole. I cannot wait, because she has so much wisdom and experience about how to actively put into place this connection aspect. And so, Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about your course, what it's called, when it is, and who should attend?
Okay, sure. I can do that. It's called PSA, which we all think of as, public service announcement, but it stands for Please Secure the Airway. And it's for interdisciplinary professionals. It's 3 hours online, and there's going to be a recording available for 30 days for those who can't attend in person. But it really it stems from just my love of Airway. And when I first came into this space, like so many other people, I think we felt real passionate and almost like Airway warriors. And as I have continued to evolve and meet more people and treat more patients, there's a lot of members in all of our communities who would like more information, that want to be part of our Airway teams, that want to be collaborative. And, the truth is, most of us don't get taught this in school. We're lucky when we find it. It's magical when we find it, when we're out of school, and then it really hits. And so this is kind of like me screaming from the rooftops, like, here's the PSA, we can share this. Some people that I think probably follow you, Karindy, have such beautiful tools and are already in that space, but they might just also be looking for ways that are not like spending a week or a month, for some of their colleagues who want to be on their teams, who want to be able to, look at what's going on here. The mouth and face kind of tell a big picture. And unless we're trained to know what to look for, like what myofunctional disorders could be red flags for sleep disordered breathing. right? And what's all like the research behind that? Why in the world is this so important? And there's so many, at least in speech language pathology, like every area in our scope of practice is affected by sleep and airway issues. So this is really just to bring people together in that space. They could be anywhere on the spectrum in their learning, but it's intended to introduce people who haven't had this exploration yet. And then what I'm going to do is level it up a little bit with some novel topics like the family nervous system, a triad approach to care, limbic lockdown, something I kind of coined in the pandemic.
Oh, wait, can we talk about limbic lockdown?
Yeah,
this sounds amazing.
We can. Ages ago, I was taking a course by Tina Payne Bryson, who alongside Dan Siegel came up with upstairs brain, downstairs brain. And essentially, when you're in your limbic system, right, when you're in a heightened sympathetic state, you're in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, right? And that is the place or the state of a lot of our kids who are experiencing mouth breathing, who have sleep disordered breathing, who have various types of special needs, who have anxiety, which, at least in my practice, I'd say about 70% of my airway kids have comorbid anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Retained primitive reflexes, technology addiction, sensory processing dysfunction. If you have ADHD, all those things affect the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So essentially, when you're in your downstairs brain, when you're in that fight or flight, you're not getting into that upstairs brain in your prefrontal cortex, which we know is like that CEO of our whole body, right? It's generating novel ideas. It's problem solving for us. It's helping us pay attention. It's helping us look at all of our choices. It's helping us to self-regulate, right? To organize our space and our environment around us. And so neurophysiologically, you're like locked out of your prefrontal cortex. So I call it limbic lockdown. You're like stuck in limbic. I wrote an article on that for the ASHA leader, climbing out of limbic, which in my life at the time, it was, I think back in 2017, I think I was climbing out of limbic too. And I had a good friend point that out later. And I was like, that's pretty funny.
Here's the thing. I think we have to continually be climbing out of it. We are underneath an onslaught of stressors, of things.
Exactly.
And it's so easy to, especially as parents or providers, you don't have to be a parent to be carrying the weight of a lot of people, people that you're caring for. I mean, and this can really start to, we're like, we still have to survive. And then you're in that place and you don't realize it. What are some red flags people can look for right now in themselves that they might be in that space?
Oh, I mean, it's your breathing rate. Are your palms sweaty? Is your mind racing? Are you not finding your words? You can look at people's posture. With kids, I'm like, oh, you're in turtleneck, when they bring their shoulders up, watching body language as someone turned away. So there's all kinds. In one of my other courses, I actually go over like the language cues, the physical cues, the sensory cues to help people. These are things we can start looking at in our patients just when they're in a waiting room, with certain questions on an intake. And then I apply that stuff to parents too.
So you're going to talk about in your course, that's going to be limbic lockdown. And then what would you say is going to be a little different from maybe other courses that are out there? And I'm not having us make a comparison, but if someone's like, I want to choose this one or that one, why should I come to this? What would you tell them?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm going back to what I've seen, like how people learn and just paying attention to what they respond to and what makes sense in order to kind of like step into this and say, oh, I get it. I get the whys and I get what I can do. Even if like for people to just walk away with, hey, I don't maybe have to be the one treating all these things. It may not one be in your scope of practice. And two, if it is, it maybe isn't something that's up your alley, but you'll know how to screen and refer. That sometimes is just going to be the biggest gift you can give families. So there's that. But then it's stuff like limbic lockdown. It's stuff like, I can't per se speak to what everyone does in intro courses. Right, I had a friend say, Nicole, this feels like it's kind of not intro. And I was like, well, why can't we change what we view as intro? Why can't like the family nervous system and a triad approach, why isn't that just basic information for people? Just like what we breathe matters. And I'm going to do a big reveal in this class and something I have not posted anywhere. And I'm excited, actually super excited to share that. And I won't spill it here because
that's okay. I was hoping
come to my class.
Yes, I was hoping you were going to tease that little piece, guys. So if you're like, what is this thing? If you've been following Nicole on social media, you've seen her hint at it. So come join us so you can learn about it. So for families and providers that are listening that are in this airway space and are trying to get answers, but they feel like there's a gap. There's a gap in treatment or in getting that full approach. What would you say is the gap?
Okay, Karindy, we're going to peel back the layers really far here.
Yes.
I think the gap starts in us. It's where we as providers not connected. Right? Because when we show up as connected, that's where all the creativity comes from. That's where we draw on all the information we have that's actually going to serve that person and that kiddo and the family in front of us. And then once we do that, we're creating this safe container for people. And then when a parent is wondering, how do I do this? There's so many gaps. They're starting to have realizations of things they need to do. Then I think what we do in seeing this big picture is, again, how do you eat an elephant? Giving them these plans that's just a step or two at a time. Because we can all know so much, but sometimes the biggest gift is holding some of that back because not everybody is ready to receive it. Absolutely. And we know in the airway and sleep space and the myofunctional space and all these other spaces that any parent loving their child can get overwhelmed really fast. Mm-hmm. And it's not that we ethically don't share information. It's not that we don't write this in a report, but I think we have to get really clear on what's feasible for a family. What is feasible for them in order to fill in their stepping stones? How can we support the stepping stones so they have like those little call to actions that they can do? Because as soon as we can start giving those to them, then whatever they need to go out and do for their child is going to feel so much more doable. And they're coming to us oftentimes feeling like they just can't do anything right. It's not been working. There's so many things I've been told to do. And so I think it's just creating this safe space, starting within ourselves, extending it to the families we're with, and then really sitting with, when you do your first eval or your intake, what are your priorities as a provider, and what really is going to benefit this family right now? And maybe it's just, getting them, some kids come in and they've already been through therapies and they're burned out.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's start with what they're good at. Let's start with just a couple things so they can feel like, hey, when I come in, I can do this. I can go home and know I'm going to get my stuff done and I'm going to come back feeling great. So, and I would say to just everybody that's doing this, just follow what's in you and the connection you establish with each person, because that's not going to lead you astray, especially when when you're coming from that space of best intentions for someone and you know that everyone's best interests look different than the person next to them. And you're just having this wonderful privilege of being on this journey with them. That's all it's about.
I mean, that's it. That was it. Okay, guys. So anyone that, if this is resonating with you, I really encourage you to follow. Nicole, what's your handle on Instagram?
It is Allspace Therapy. And then Nicole Archambault 11 is the other one. If you can, yeah. Well,
I will have all of that. So if you're listening to the podcast in a podcast player, you can just scroll down and you'll see it there in the notes. You can also follow this on YouTube and you'll see the links there to follow Nicole, because this discussion is an ongoing one. And I especially want to just share, if you're listening, you have the sense of imposter syndrome, it might be because it's actually this sense of wanting to learn more and feeling that unawareness of not knowing everything. That can actually be a really great thing. Okay. So I want you to not fake it, but use that as an impetus to learn and to dive into understanding that we have to be in this place of humility to really serve and love these families well and our patients well, and not get burned out. because we will. If we're just pushing without it being this flow coming from us, we will burn out so fast. So thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. And we need everybody in this. So don't burn yourselves out. And keep following Karindy. Karindy, I really appreciate you having me here. And this has been so much fun. And I know, right? So please keep it up. Please keep doing what you're doing.
So guys, I will be there for Nicole's course live. I'm going to be, me and chat and whatever. That's just how I like to jam. So I'm so excited. I hope you guys can join us there. And thank you everyone for listening. Please rate and review the podcast. It helps to get this message out to families, to providers, to everyone. And really, you can see we have a community. We want to be helping people, and we want a different future for our kids, for families to come. So thank you so much. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Myohacker podcast. Remember, small changes can make big impacts on our overall health and well-being. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. This way, more families will learn about this important information and we can make a bigger impact. Head on over to myohackerslp.com for in-depth resources and guides. You can also join me on Instagram at myohackerslp for bonus content and demos. And if you have questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, send me a message. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, let's biohack myofunctional health as myohackers who change the world through intentional action and connection and breathing. Quick disclaimer reminder, the content shared in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only.